What's up, guys? It's Dan from Coin Bureau Trading, back at it again with another crypto market update. Today we've got Solana, Sui, and Aptos. I'm sure you're all wondering what these cryptos are up to. Why have they been crashing? How long are they going to keep chopping in this range? When are they going to recover? If this is the kind of content that you enjoy, then be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel and ping that notification bell. Before we get started, do keep in mind that nothing in this video is financial advice. It's just my personal analysis of the crypto market. Your analysis could be different, and if it is, that's awesome, because the more difference of opinion that we have, the better traders and the better investors we're all going to become. So I'm going to start by just addressing the elephant in the room here, is that anything in today's analysis is probably subject to change as a result of the Liberation Day. Basically, today Trump is going to be announcing retaliatory tariffs on basically everyone, it sounds like. Of course, there's lots of mixed analysis. Let's say some people think it's going to be good, other people think it's going to be bad. I would say that most people think it's going to be bad. My personal opinion is that so long as there's clarity, the outcome doesn't really matter. So long as there's certainty, which is why I have this article up here. This article is basically arguing is that there won't be any certainty. There will still be uncertainty. I'm hoping that by the end of today, regardless of whether it's bullish or bearish, so long as there's certainty, so long as people understand what, that this tariff stuff is over, or at least mostly over, that'll be enough for the markets to kind of start to, gradually recover from whatever level they fall to as a result of today's announcement. But again, it's possible that today's announcement could not be as severe as people are expecting. And when you consider, guys, that people are so bearish, markets are down, whether it's crypto or stocks, like everyone is feeling just horrible. So even the slightest kind of like positive news could be enough to kind of like cause a recovery. It's like, oh, like I thought it was going to be way worse, right? Like people just assume that it's the end of the world, recession is coming and stuff like that. So anything that's not that is probably going to be positive. But the key thing, again, in my mind, is so long as there's certainty, that's all that matters. That's all I'm hoping for at the end of today. I'm not going to be taking, today's price action to personally. Let's say if there's a big pump or a big dump, I would not react too much to that, just so long as there's certainty. If there's uncertainty, yeah, then we're going to have to talk about that at a later date. Anyways, guys, so starting with Solana and kind of like thinking ahead here, as I mentioned in yesterday's video, I do believe that April is going to be a pretty choppy month, and I do think that we're going to start to see some recovery in crypto in May. Part of the reason for this is that there's a whole bunch of big events that are happening, whether it's for Bitcoin or Sui or I guess in this case Solana. Basically, there's going to be an Accelerate conference here happening on May 19th to 23rd in New York City. It looks like it's going to be a very big conference, kind of like similar to Solana's Breakpoint conferences. I imagine there's going to be lots of announcements and lots of bullish stuff that will be announced there. Of course, this assumes that the macro conditions will be better at the time these announcements happens. As we've seen, guys, like even when the announcements are super bullish, like strategic Bitcoin reserve or whatever, it has no effect on price if the macro is bearish. And again, this ties into what I was just saying about the tariffs. So long as there's certainty, hopefully by the end of today, but if not by the end of this month, basically by the time that these events are happening, there should, that's almost like 2 months away. There should be, or 6 weeks rather, there should be certainty by that point. There should be enough of a like a good macro environment for these catalysts to actually start mattering and affecting the price. At least that's my hope. But we'll have to take things one step at a time. But as things stand, this is kind of like the main thing to look for in case you're wondering when is Solana going to recover. I would say that the top candidate for that is this event that's coming up again in 6 weeks' time, which is still a while away, but sometime in May. Who knows? Maybe in April we'll start to see some signs of recovery, which of course brings me to the chart. So as I mentioned yesterday, guys, and I'm going to be doing this with all the cryptos I cover this week, I'm going to be doing things a little bit different and using the Bollinger Bands, which is my personal favorite indicator. As you guys can see, the Bollinger Bands are squeezing. A squeeze basically means like when these outer bands are kind of coming close together. This happens after crypto prices have been trading sideways for a long time. In this case, you can see that, with the exception of a little bit of a rally here back in, like let's say a couple of weeks ago, that Sol has basically been chopping sideways here. Of course, we're on the 4-hour chart, so that's why this, this price action looks huge, but it's, it's just been chopping here within like a $10 or $20 range, between 120 and 140 to be exact, roughly speaking. So you can see that basically for the last 2 months, Sol has been chopping in this range, and now it's in the process of squeezing. And of course, the question is, which way is it going to squeeze? We could see that there was a little bit of a fake out to the upside, and now we're below the Bollinger Band moving average on the 4-hour. And it's interesting that price has been super static. But that aside, guys, the key thing to watch for here is that hopefully by the end of today, we will see Sol break back above this Bollinger Band moving average on the 4-hour, which is around $125. If we do see that happen, guys, then of course we just zoom out to the daily here and we say, what's the next level? The next level would be somewhere around $130. So, just like a 5 or 6% gain. You could see that Sol actually tapped this Bollinger Band moving average yesterday, got rejected. Not looking too hot right now. But if it was to get above this daily Bollinger Band, then we can zoom out to the weekly and we would see the next level to watch for would be around 100. Well, by the time these lines move like as prices move, so by the time that we would see that recovery, maybe something around 185, $180, which would be, of course, like a 50% move from the current price. I'm not saying that's going to happen tomorrow. We're here on the weekly, but basically, eventually, Sol will come and retest this level, even just to retest it, and then and I imagine when this retest happens, people will say it's a dead cat bounce and it's over, or whatever. There'll probably be a minor rejection. But then after that rejection happens, basically it's normal for prices to go up to a key level, get a rejection, and then after that, that's the part that matters. Does it then rally again and get above that level, or will it get rejected and then just keep rolling over? So far, we haven't really seen Sol or any crypto, or most cryptos for that matter. Many cryptos basically they fell below this Bollinger Band moving average on the weekly back in February, and they have not managed to even retest that level. A retest of that level will come at some point, and of course, when that retest happens, that's when there's going to be lots of debate of okay, is this a dead cat bounce or is this the beginning of a recovery? And of course, we'll have to take things one step at a time there. As you can see, the Bollinger Band moving average on the weekly really shows us very clearly when Solana is in a medium term, bullish trend or bearish trend. Obviously, it's been in a bearish trend for the last couple of months, but that's not, in my view, that's not a reason to be, thinking that the cycle is over and everything. As I mentioned in last week's crypto trading tutorials for beginners, you have to look at things through the lens of distribution and accumulation. Here you can see there was some distribution, and here we can quite clearly see, in my opinion, that there's been accumulation. And the question is, when are we going to get back into that distribution zone? How high would Solana go after that? That's something we're going to have to play by ear. But of course, I'm sure the question you're all wondering is how low Solana could go. This is something that I think I've pointed out in previous videos. The Bollinger Band moving average on the monthly, that's something I mentioned yesterday actually. The Bollinger Band moving average on the monthly is a very nice level that shows you, especially for Bitcoin and large altcoins, that tells you when a crypto is in a bull market versus a bear market. When it's below that level, it's in a bear market. When it's above that level, it's in a bull market. Right now, Solana, of course, we're only 2 days into the month, so I wouldn't read into this candle too much yet, but Solana would need to at least hold around this level. It doesn't have to be exactly above that level or wicking against it or whatever. So long as it's within range of this Bollinger Band moving average on the monthly, then that's completely fine. But I guess the key takeaway here, guys, being that if Sol was to drop any further than this, like if it was to drop, let's say, I don't know, to $100 for a prolonged period for like a month or two, then that would be reason to flip bearish and for me to flip bearish and to think that maybe my thesis of the crypto market going up is wrong. But until that happens, I continue to be bullish. And of course, it is very painful to be bullish when we're at the lower end of this range. But even just using basic support and resistance, we can see that Sol is basically just at the lower end of a range that it's been trading in, again, for, all basically over a year now, right? It's basically just been chopping between $120, let's say, and 240 or whatever. It's just been chopping within that range, which is frustrating. But again, it's not necessarily bearish. This is completely normal price action, in my view. Last thing I will mention, that this pattern that we see forming here on the monthly for Solana, it actually looks like a 3 stars in the south pattern, which is one of many candlestick patterns here. It's definitely take some time to learn these patterns. It'll help you out a lot. It's not like the main thing that I watch for, but it is kind of like a nice addition, let's say, to get some confirmation. And this 3 stars in the south pattern, of course, is a bullish reversal pattern. So that would suggest that not this month, but basically by next month we would start to see a recovery. And it is interesting. Like you can even think about it that it's like the red candles, are getting smaller, which kind of tells you that the selling momentum is slowing down. If that makes any sense, that's kind of like the way you can read this 3 stars in the south pattern. And when the slowing momentum slows down, then of course that means that the buying's about to begin. But again, I don't think that's going to start until next month. But who knows? Maybe by the middle of this month, we'll start to see some recovery. And before we go any further, guys, I do need to shill the Coin Bureau deals page here with our awesome Binance deal, 20% trading fee discount with up to $600 in bonuses. That's the biggest deal you can get. Of course, Binance is the world's largest crypto exchange. This is a deal that's exclusively available through the Coin Bureau, and it's completely free. To take advantage of it, all you need to do is go to that link, click that sign up now button. If the link is in the description, all you have to do is click on that link. It'll take you to this screen, enter your email or phone number. The sign up sign-up process literally takes 2 or 3 minutes, and you'll get access, again, not only to this free deal, this 20% trading fee discount, and up to $600 in bonuses, but basically like every single altcoin you would ever need is on Binance. So do be sure to check that out. The link is down in the description. Take advantage of that deal while it's still around. I don't know how long it's going to be around, so just take advantage of that. If there's a crypto that you like, chances are that it's probably on Binance. Anyways, guys, moving on now to Sui. So similarly to Solana, Sui has an event that's coming up here in early May, specifically May 1st to 2nd, which is Sui Basecamp, which again is kind of similar to Solana's Breakpoint conference, let's say. I do expect that there's going to be some big announcements there. I know I was saying the same thing about the Sui Gaming Summit, but of course the macro conditions were still not good enough for that summit to have any impact on Sui's price. But assuming the macro improves, by the end of this month, which is my base case, I do think that we'll get clarity around those tariffs. I do think that all this macro stuff will calm down and we'll start to see things stabilize, and that should create the conditions required for the Sui Basecamp event to have an impact on Sui's price. Maybe that'll change, but as things stand today, that's kind of the thesis that I'm working with. And again, I do believe that most altcoins will start to see a significant recovery starting sometime in May. So moving on now to Sui, we can do the same thing that we did with Sol and of course with the altcoins that we did yesterday, starting all the way down at the 4-hour. You can see that Sui yesterday actually managed to break above the 4-hour Bollinger Band moving average, break out of the, it was basically squeezing to the upside is what I'm trying to say. And what's unfortunate, of course, that it did get rejected and it fell back to this Bollinger Band moving average on the 4-hour. But so far, Sui's still looking pretty good. If we zoom out to the daily, you can see that Sui actually is kind of holding around the daily Bollinger Band moving average, which is pretty good. So that's also a good sign. Sui's looking super strong here. And then, of course, that begs the question, if the recovery was to continue, or rather the rally, or whatever you want to call it, then what's the next level to watch? That would be the Bollinger Band moving average on the weekly, which is around $3.5, which would also be a 50% gain from here. Pretty nice stuff. I guess in contrast to Solana, Sui did kind of see a retest of that level before it got rejected and moved lower, but I do still think we're going to see at least a retest of that level, and then from there, of course, we'll have to see, is Sui going to continue recovering, or is it going to get rejected again and keep consolidating, below this level? Of course, my base case is that it will get above that level and continue powering higher, but in case it doesn't, then the lowest price that Sui could go, in my opinion, I guess based on the Bollinger Bands, is around $1.75, and of course that does coincide with a historical zone of support here. You can even see just below $2, somewhere around like 1.8, 1.75, right? And similarly, Solana, you can also see that Sui is painting this very nice 3 stars in the south pattern, which of course foreshadows a rally potentially in in May. We're already in April. It foreshadows a rally starting sometime in May, and I do think that we're going to see another big leg higher. And if you look, guys, like if you zoom out, you can see that the price action that we're seeing now with Sui looks very similar to what we saw kind of like over last spring, where the price action was crashing into the summer, and then in the fall there was a massive rally. This time, of course, my thesis is that I think we're going to see the cycle tops over the summer, and so we're seeing kind of like this crash starting basically in the winter, and now going into the spring we'll start to see this recovery, and then in the summer we'll get that 3 or 4 candle, just like massive, basically up only price action, right? This is what I'm expecting for Sui and for most cryptos in terms of cycle top. I'm honestly not sure, but I do think that Sui and Solana and all of these are going to surprise to the upside because they're just the most user-friendly cryptos. They're the fastest, they're the cheapest, they have the most integrations, the most recognition, cutting-edge tech, all that sorts of fun stuff. Anyways, guys, moving on now to Aptos. To be honest, there was nothing that really stood out to me for Aptos, but I will kind of give you guys, I guess, my tinfoil hat take on why, and this is it's one of many reasons why I've been super bullish on Aptos. I guess right off the bat, I should say that it's easy to forget that PayPal was an investor in Aptos, and Aptos has close connections to the Trump administration, similarly to Solana, similarly to Sui for that matter. Some of you guys might have heard that Eric Trump reportedly holds Sui. I haven't seen any confirmation of that or anything like that. But the point being is that it's known that PayPal was an investor in Aptos. These PayPal investors, PayPal mafia guys, whatever you want to call them, of course, they're super involved in the Trump administration. So that's kind of one thing to kind of keep in your mind. Of course, Aptos does have this ETF coming up, but the bigger thing to watch, and this is where the tinfoil hat goes on, is some of you guys might have remembered that Trump had revealed back in January. Oh, I guess I'll back up first. So, of course, TikTok is kind of being forced to sell to some US company, right? And TikTok, I mean, I don't have to explain what TikTok is. It's like the most popular social media platform in the world by users, I think, at this point, or like in the top three. But point being is that basically ByteDance, the Chinese parent company, is being forced to kind of sell TikTok to US investors or like the TikTok. Again, like not going to get into the details. Point being is that someone from the US is going to buy TikTok. Microsoft, Trump revealed back in January that Microsoft was in talks to buy TikTok, and it's interesting that like this headline seems to have like, or everyone seems to have like memory hold this headline. We're hearing that like Andreessen Horowitz, like A16Z, this crypto VC, might also be involved in this TikTok deal or whatever. But I do think it's worth pointing out that Trump said Microsoft would buy TikTok. And the other thing that I find very interesting is that Aptos and Microsoft actually have a very close relationship. They've signed multiple partnerships. They have multiple like things that they're working on together to basically integrate Web3 with Web2, like to integrate blockchain, whether it's with AI or social media potentially and all this stuff. I don't think they ever specified social media, but just imagine like if Microsoft was to purchase TikTok and Aptos, you guys have to remember that Aptos was originally created by Facebook, right? And of course the plan was for Facebook to basically integrate. Back then it was called Libra, and then it split into two projects, Aptos and Sui. But back then the plan was to basically integrate Libra into like into WhatsApp. I think specifically they were probably looking into Facebook and all this stuff. So basically, Aptos and Sui were designed to be integrated into social media platforms. So if Microsoft was to buy TikTok, then it wouldn't surprise me at all if we would see a bump in Aptos's price because. And if we do see that, I think that would be a big deal because then that would kind of tell us that there is potentially an integration coming on that front. And of course, that begs the question of when this would happen. Basically, by this Saturday. So this is this is the reason why I'm bringing this up. Like in contrast to the catalyst here for Solana and for Sui, this potential keyword tinfoil hat catalyst here for Aptos could potentially be coming up this weekend. Of course, it depends on who buys TikTok. If Microsoft buys TikTok and we see an Aptos pump, that's definitely something you're going to want to pay attention to. It's something I'm going to be watching very closely. And of course, who knows? I'm sure like it's going to be like a nothing burger and it's not going to affect anything. But of all the things, again, I'm always looking for like what people are not paying attention to. And this Microsoft potentially acquiring TikTok and Aptos having a very close relationship to Microsoft, and Aptos originally being created by Facebook for purposes of social media and integrating blockchain and all this stuff that Microsoft is using Aptos for. Like, hello. Like it's not that far-fetched to say maybe there's something that's going to happen there. Even just something as simple as, I don't know, like integrating NFTs, right? This is something that Instagram had done with a bunch of blockchains. I think it was Solana, Ethereum, and Polygon, and Flow. Like they had done this in the last cycle. So the idea that Microsoft would do something similar with Aptos if they purchase TikTok is not far-fetched at all. Like it's something that has happened before Aptos and Sui existed. But anyways, guys, that brings me, of course, to the Aptos chart. Maybe that rambling, was my way of like saying, oh, I don't want to look at the chart. It looks horrible, right? But one quick thing I'll say, here on the 4 hour, of course, Aptos isn't looking too hot. It is squeezing though, so we could see again a big move to the upside or to the downside. So far, right now, it's just still chopping within this squeeze, so to speak. But one thing I want to point out before we start zooming out is that I couldn't help but notice that this price action here on Aptos looks very much like an inverse head and shoulder, which is of course like a pretty potentially a bullish like reversal pattern. So if we do see Aptos get a bump here and let's say get back above, I don't know, $5.5 or somewhere around there, then this could be a confirmation of a bottoming pattern that Aptos would start to recover. But unfortunately, it doesn't look that hot here on the daily. Of course, the Bollinger Band moving average, lo and behold, happens to be around $5.5. Surprise, surprise. So that would be the next level to look for if Aptos was to get above the Bollinger Band moving average on the 4 hour. After that, we would zoom out even more. Aptos potentially rallying up to around $8 to the Bollinger Band moving average on the weekly. And of course, that would be a pretty sizable gain here of around 55 or 60%. And similarly, I guess to Solana and many other altcoins, Aptos never really retested this Bollinger Band moving average. And again, the thing that people forget is like when you see a break above a level, it's normal for prices to retest that level. Like this whole rally that you see here, you can see that like Aptos kind of retested. When was this? Back in October or November. Aptos basically rallied up and then it retested this Bollinger Band and then it bounced and kept moving higher. We still haven't seen a retest like that here. And again, like when we do see that retest, which is inevitable in my opinion, people will say, oh, it's like a dead cat bounce or whatever. But if we do see Aptos get above, then that would be very bullish. The caveat being that in contrast to Aptos and to Solana and Sui, you can see that Aptos is not looking very hot here on the on the monthly. And to be honest, guys, I think that's mostly a consequence of the fact that Aptos has basically been chopping sideways for like 3 years, or like 2 or 3 years. Okay, so it's like it didn't really have it never really had like a significant rally. Like you can imagine, unfortunately, like the Bollinger Band moving average doesn't go all the way back here, but you can imagine that this level has basically just been in the middle this entire time, right? So I wouldn't like, this is one of the very rare or very few cases where the Bollinger Band moving average doesn't work very well. Again, as I was saying, like this tends to work better for Bitcoin and larger cap altcoins. Aptos is a large cap, but it's like on the lower end of that spectrum, if that makes any sense. So again, like I wouldn't take this too personally and think, oh, like Aptos is over and like, it means it's over. Aptos of all the cryptos is actually crazy. Like it's been chopping in a range for like almost 3 years. It's mental. But I am bullish. I remain bullish on Aptos. I hold Solana, Sui, and Aptos. I hold all three of these cryptos, and I do think that of all these three, and I've been saying it literally now for weeks, and I'm going to keep saying it. I do think that Aptos has the biggest potential to surprise to the upside. And when we're down at this levels, like down in this lower range that it's been chopping in literally for 3 years, like if like the when I last I accumulated Aptos over the summer. If I was to accumulate again, I would be accumulating now. Not financial advice. I'm just saying like, in my opinion, the best time to buy Aptos was over last summer. This is like a pretty good entry point potentially. I guess we again saw that entry point back in 2023 and back in 2022. And who knows? At the very least, hopefully it'll work its way back up to this range here around $20. But I do think that Aptos is going to head much higher between now and the end of the crypto bull market. Anyways, guys, if you did make it this far, I do hope that you found this information helpful. And if you did, then be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ping that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.